Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. I am your host today, BJ Cunningham, alongside my co-host and friend, Anthony DeBundo, as we take you through the 10-match Premier League slate and take a little jaunt around Europe as well. But first, Wondergoal is proudly presented by Bet365, and Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. It believes that every sport should be epic. Every match, every game, every goal, every play, from the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself. When you sign up today with code ACTION, you'll get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, you must be 21 years or older, must be present in Colorado, Iowa, New Jersey, Ohio, or Virginia. If you know someone who has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we have a wonderful Premier League slate ahead of us this weekend. We have great matches from Manchester United traveling to Burnley, Liverpool taking on David Moyes, but there's really only one place to start, and it's a podcast derby. It's almost fitting that Michael is out tonight, so me and Anthony can go head-to-head. Arsenal hosts Tottenham at the Emirates. According to Anthony DeBundo, Arsenal, the worst team in the world, a team that is destined for relegation, is somehow a minus 143 favorite at home. Tottenham sitting at plus 333 with the draw at plus 320. Anthony, I'll let you go first. I have a ton of thoughts on this match. In terms of the market perspective, I think that the line is about right. But other than that, I mean, do you think Tottenham has a chance to pull off a stunning upset over, well, it wouldn't be an upset according to you?
No, of course it'd be an upset. Arsenal's at home. They're the better team. My projection makes Arsenal about minus 129. So I'm pretty much a little bit short on the market, but once you take out like VIG, it's pretty much in line with where it is. I'm going to put my hand up. If you're listening on the podcast, you can't see it. If you're on YouTube, you can. I was wrong today about Arsenal in the Champions League. Gabriel Jesus made his return. And I'll tell you what, they sure did look a lot better. More fluid in attack, created a lot more big chances, easily able to kind of carve open a PSV defense that, I'm not particularly high on, but that I thought would show well. I bet the under 3. And once I saw the lineup, I was like, oh boy, Trossard and Jesus is a fun combo. I'll be interested to see what Arteta does here. Does he stick with Jesus? I mean, he should, and it would be certainly optimal to do so. But, so far in the league, if you just look at pure XG difference, 5 matches, Tottenham and Arsenal have not been all that different in terms of, quality of chances created. They've gone about it in different ways. Arsenal have been clearly the much better defensive side. Tottenham have created more chances. Once you factor in strength of schedule, these two teams are pretty comparable. But again, Arsenal getting Jesus back, I think raises them up enough to the point where I would probably pass on betting Spurs unless I can get, like a full 3/4 of a goal. And then I would be more interested because I think the market is up on Tottenham, and I'm not totally sure that they've proven enough yet to warrant that. I think there's still a question about where the shots come from, and we're going to get to that in a second because I do have a prop that I'm playing. Mm-hmm. But I think when you look at how this plays out tactically, there's a lot of uncertainty because we have not seen Ange Ball go up against a team of the caliber of Arsenal in terms of possession structure. We've seen Tottenham beat Man United and how they went about that, but Man United and Arsenal are very different in how they approach matches and how they want to control. United plays more, off the ball pressing, and Arsenal wants to strangle possession away at all costs. So we have not seen this Ange 2-3-5 go up against a team of this caliber. We did see them play Barcelona in a friendly, and I think there are parallels to how Arteta's Arsenal and Xavi's Barca play. And look, Tottenham was able to control good portions of the possession in that match and generated a lot of shots, but they also conceded a ton up the wings in transition. So that's going to be another red flag. This could be a match where, not having Martinelli could hurt because he is the best pure outlet that they have in transition as a runner. Trossard's, much more of a Arteta-y type forward, but from a side perspective, I have no real opinion here. The total looks about right to me. We've seen Tottenham totals take a ton of over money day of. Every match this season, just about, the market has steamed up. You saw it against Sheffield where, we liked 3.25, 3 plus money early in the week under, and then it steamed up all the way to almost 3.5 before kick. Against United, it steamed up. Against Bournemouth. So I've actually found myself betting a lot of late Tottenham unders. I've done it twice now, where the market goes way too high, I think. And so if this were to get to a 3.5 flat, that is when I would absolutely buy the under 100%. But from a side perspective, I have no bet here. Sad, but I have a prop, but I'll let you talk first, then we'll get into the prop.
Yeah, I don't really have a side here. We off air, we had talked a little bit of maybe about both teams to score no, which is currently at plus 150. Kind of interesting. The one thing, and I think you hit the nail on the head, is that we haven't seen what Tottenham's going to be like when the other team is controlling a ton of possession and they have to be the ones sitting in. Are they actually going to press with reckless abandonment like Ange Ball currently is, where they're second in passive per defensive action? Or are they going to sit more passive and let Arsenal have the ball? Now, I understand Arsenal is not putting up these eye-popping expected goals numbers or really anything, and that's, people like you can be concerned about that. But what Arsenal does have right now is complete game control, and that's something Arteta really, really wants. Arsenal right now is leading the Premier League in field tilt. They're allowing the lowest expected threat. They're controlling over 66% of the possession and the number one team in the Premier League in terms of offensive pass per defensive action rate or playing through pressure. So if Tottenham were to start pressing Arsenal high and try to disrupt their build-up play, it's a really, really dangerous game to play against Arsenal. And the one thing that I'll say about Ange is that, yes, we haven't seen this before. If you go back to last year and you draw some parallels with his Celtic team, now his Celtic team's obviously very different than the Tottenham team that he has now, but in terms of tactical, how he would set up, if you remember, Celtic was in a group with RB Leipzig and Real Madrid. In both of the away matches, they got absolutely ripped apart. They tried to press high. They didn't really know what to do out of possession because they held the ball for so long in the Scottish Premier League. And then, those two teams really got at them in transition and they gave up a ton of expected goals. Now, I don't think that exact same scenario is going to happen here, but it does draw some parallels of what Ange Ball is. And it's obviously, high pressing, intense, trying to disrupt build-up play, and then looking to play teams in transition. I think we need to see it first before we decide, to essentially take a side here one way or the other. I do project Arsenal at minus 139, so I'm right in line with where the market is. Did project both teams to score no at plus 122, so plus 150 does have some value. And if, Arsenal is able to have that uber game control and they play the back four that they are currently playing, which is the back four that was the reason why they were allowing under one expected goal per 90 last season before Saliba got hurt, then it makes me more inclined, like you said, to bet an under or both teams to score no. So I think we're kind of leaning in the same direction here, but aside, I have no opinion. But I think you have a great anytime goal scorer pick here.
Yeah, so let's play trivia. Who do you think has taken the most shots for Tottenham this year?
Probably say, let's see, they've been kind of rotating strikers, and I could say Son.
And no, actually, it's James Maddison. Okay. Number 2 is Dejan Kulusevski. Okay. They both played pretty much every minute in the Prem this year. The third person is Pape Matar Sarr, their new central midfielder who has played in that 8 role, in this Tottenham 2-3-5 setup next to Bissouma, but he's had a lot of free reign to get forward. So, you have your 6, which is Bissouma, your 8, which is Sarr, and then your 10. So Madison's more of the playmaker role. And because of the lack of shots they've gotten from the striker position, it's been a lot of Sarr. And I've been betting his, shots per match over. Now, we don't have markets up yet for individual players. This is Wednesday. I'll be fascinated to see what his overshots or to get a shot on target looks like. For me, it's not all that different from what Noah Long just did to this Arsenal team, where he found a ton of space in transition. And I do think, as good as Arsenal has been defensively, and I will credit them for that, because even if you schedule adjust their numbers, they have been an elite defense. They have still not played anybody of the caliber of Tottenham, I think, from an attacking perspective. And look, I know how good, United has looked at times in attack, but I consider them to be more of a jumbled mess. And look, United had their opportunities and did get a decent number of shots in that match, especially as it wore on later on in the match. So Sarr for me is somebody that I'm going to be looking toward with, anytime goal scorer. He's listed at 12-1 at one book. That is way too high. He has taken 3.97 shots per 90 from an average shot distance of 12 yards. That is like forward level number. That's like what Harry Kane did when he broke onto the scene at Tottenham. And we were like, holy shit, who's this Harry Kane guy? In 2015-16. So the fact that Sarr is getting these kind of shot numbers, this much freedom to go forward, and that, I don't think Ange is the type to back down from a challenge. I mean, we saw how they tried to play out against United, and I think they're going to do that again. And that means they're going to take chances. They're going to probably concede as well, as a result, but they're going to get Sarr's feet in the penalty area. And if he's going to be roaming around that box 12-1, I'm going to take a shot. Pape Matar Sarr.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, I don't want to see a Tottenham player score, but if, I had to pick one, I guess that's tremendous value. All right, let's move on to what is really not that great of a 10 a.m. slate on Saturday, but we'll start with
terrible.
We'll start with one that we both have. Crystal Palace hosting Fulham in a London derby. Crystal Palace minus 110. Fulham sitting at plus 320 with the draw at plus 240. In terms of spots, I mean, it doesn't get much better in terms of a price and a spot here for Crystal Palace. So I'll be on them at minus 110, and I'm sure you will be too.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt, that Fulham get kind of a meh win. I mean, they were better than Luton Town at home, but they weren't like, whoa, good in that match. And then, Palace takes a 1-0 lead into the final, minutes, and Villa brings on Duran, who is a player to watch for sure. I think he's really popped in the minutes that I've seen him play. They get that, then they get a very dodgy pen, and then a third, 98th and 90 and 101st minute goal. This was the first week where the Prem extra time really mattered. Yeah. I mean, you had Sheffield. My buddy had a Sheffield moneyline ticket.
Yeah.
You had the under 3,
yeah.
and then I know people that had the Palace plus a half. And I mean, we're adding a lot of extra time here. And look, in injuries, time wasting, I think it's good they're legislating it out, but man, is it painful to have to watch those things. But in this match, I have Palace considerably better. The questions we had about Palace were, how good is the attack? They sold Zaha. Elise hasn't, been a factor. How good could this attack really be? Well, as it turns out, they're getting elite production from Eze and from Edouard this year, and significantly better than last year. So that's where they've made up for it. And that's the difference. Last year, Eze was a 0.39 XG plus XA, which is a pretty good forward, attacking forward production, 24 years old. You'd say that's solid production for, a mid-table to lower tier attacking team. But this year he has jumped up 0.6 XG plus XA per 90. That is a pretty significant leap. Is he going to sustain it? Could he regress? Sure. But it's not like Palace have played a bunch of bumps. They've played a decent schedule thus far. They played Brentford, they played Arsenal, and they played Villa. It's 3 pretty good teams. So when you look at it, pretty average strength schedule and putting up really good numbers. And then Edouard, he's been the missing piece. For years it was, well, if Palace could just get a striker. Ever since Benteke left, they haven't had a true striker. Well, Edouard puts really good defensive work in, and he's also putting up good expected goals numbers. He's got 4 goals already and 0.61 XG plus XA per 90 after pretty much he's almost at his season total for XG this year relative, versus last year in about a fourth of the playing time. So he's on his way to a breakout season as well, and it's come with a jump in shots. It's not just a couple big chances. The shots per 90 are up. So I'm a believer in that against a very bad Fulham defense. Fulham continues to start Raul Jimenez. The attack was much better once he went off the pitch, and it was Carlos Vinicius. But again, we know what he is too, and it's not a particularly good striker at the Premier League level. So I think I have the better defense. I think I have the better attack now with Mitrovic gone, and I'm at home only laying minus 110. I mean, I felt the same way about the Wolves match 2 weeks ago. This is just short. Palace is the better team. I'm going to lay it. I know the attacking concerns, they play this passive approach. But again, Edouard and Eze have been really good. So long as they continue to produce like this, I think that Palace is a 11th place team and Fulham's 17th. So right. I'm going to lay it with Palace.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. If you liked Palace against Wolves at home at minus 110, you have to love them here against Fulham. And you mentioned the match against Luton Town. Yeah, I didn't think Fulham was I mean, when's the last time you saw Fulham hold 77% possession in a match? I mean, that was pretty insane. It kind of just speaks to what Luton Town is right now. And really what the problems that have existed for Fulham is that they're supposed to be this direct transitional team. Well, right now they're dead last in the Premier League in final third to box entry conversion rate. They've had quite a few final third entries, which is kind of impressive, but they just haven't been able to translate those into box entries. And it kind of goes along with what you're saying about not having a true good, at least out and out striker that can actually get inside the box. So going against the Palace defense that, yes, is going to be without Guehi for this match. They're obviously without him for against Aston Villa. Chris Richards played, okay here or there, a little shaky at times, but
he's okay.
He played fine.
He's good on the ball. That's the key, because they don't have a midfield.
They don't.
Really.
No. I mean, Decore is,
but they have good. They have Anderson, Guehi, Richards. They're good.
Decore is an incredible ball stopper, but he's just like Palace is not a build out of the back and let's use a lot of short passes. It's a lot of get balls up to Eze and out in the wings and
Route one
football, which could work very well here against a Fulham defense that's already conceded 10 big scoring chances in 5 matches. So. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I only projected Palace at minus 116, but Fulham also going to be without Anthony Robinson, which is a loss for them. So Palace minus 110 for both of us. All right, speaking of Luton Town, let's move on to that match. Luton Town taking on Wolves. Luton Town's a plus 225 home underdog at Kenilworth Road. Wolves a road favorite plus 120 with the draw at plus 240. I feel like this every single week when I watch Luton Town and I'm like, this team is no good. Like they have no, they have no talent. Like there's really no route here where I'm like, they can actually get some type of offensive production going forward. And then every week I just stare at the odds and I'm just like, how can I not bet them as a home underdog against this Wolves team that, listen, I think Wolves has actually been playing like all right through 5 matches. I don't think they've been just like this horrible, like deadbeat team. But really what I believe it is what's been happening with Wolves and why they've been good is because they've been playing a lot of teams that will, get into a end-to-end style match or press them high. And really they've had a lot of space to operate. And Neto's look great. Like Cunha has been good on the ball, terrible at finishing. But in this type of match where Luton Town, like I said, just conceded 77% possession to Fulham, I have real question marks on how Wolves is going to get margin here as a road favorite. So I like Luton Town. I don't know if I want to bet them at minus 140 on as a plus a half at home. We'll see where the market goes with this one. The market's already kind of gone towards towards Luton Town a little bit. But stay tuned for the underdog section. I might be adding them there. Do you have any thoughts for this match?
Pedro Neto is back.
He is.
We joked about this with Alon Shapiro from the FML FPL pod, or I joked about it last year because everybody in FPL wanted Pedro Neto because he was back and he was going to be the guy. And everybody looked at his stats from the year before, prior to the ACL, and said, "Oh my gosh, this guy was like the best player in the league, most underrated player." And he is now second in the league in progressive carries into the final third. Behind only Caro Matoma and ahead of Saka, Julian Alvarez, and Ebereche Eze. So that's pretty good company. And in carries into the penalty area, he is 5th behind Raz, Kulusevski, Rashford, and Matoma. So, that is the attack. But like you said, how much room are they going to get? I don't think there's going to be much. So, yeah, this would be Luton or nothing for me. They've played even in their last 2 games roughly with Fulham and with West Ham. That would lead me to bet them here too. But again, I told myself 5. I still haven't used them yet. If we can get a little more Wolves money late, I would love like a minus 120, 115, 140 is a little steep for me. So I am going to pass.
I know. It's just every week I just stare at these Luton Town lines and I'm just like, how can I not bet them at these numbers? But we'll see what happens. I hope we get that late steam. All right, let's move on to the final match of the 10 a.m. window. Manchester City coming off that Lux Box win against Red Star Belgrade, hosting Nottingham Forest. They are a minus 700 home favorite. Forest 14-1 on the money line with the draw at plus 750. Easiest pass on the board for me, but we've said it a couple weeks now. Is Forest like kind of good, like bettable good in a match like this, Anthony? Maybe. Bad spot.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Opening day, Forest had a bunch of injuries, but the team that they put out on Monday, and I ended up betting them late. The market came in, started to take some money, and I was looking at the lineup, and I was like, this could be a good team. And, with Hudson-Odoi and Taiwo and Gibbs-White and Sangare, like that is a very functional attack. And then they went out and had 0.7 expected goals at home against Burnley in what was a pretty boring match. I mean, the Cho goal was sick, but they didn't do a ton. But I think there were some encouraging signs in terms of ball progression and becoming more of a quality team. But none of that really matters in this match because now instead of hosting Burnley, which is one of the easiest fixtures of the season, they have the most difficult fixture in the world away to Manchester City. So here's the thing: City have addressed their depth concerns. Doku coming in, elite one-on-one dribbly winger, pretty much just plugged the hole that they had there. And Alvarez and Foden have taken bigger roles this year. And there's real questions about, like, have they replaced the shots that they get from De Bruyne? Have they replaced the passing? But the interesting thing to me here is that Forest has actually been a decent defensive team thus far. How? I don't know. They've been much more passive than they were last year. Remember, there were some matches earlier last year when Forest was legitimately trying to force the issue, trying to play soccer and trying to make things happen, and they kind of got exposed and then slowly started to bunker a little more. We've seen a much more bunkered version of Forest thus far this season. I think it's why they struggled with Burnley, and I think it's why they've been competitive with United, Arsenal, covered all these big spreads. So it's 2.25 right now. At 2.5, I will bet Nottingham Forest if we get there.
Yeah.
At 2.25, I want a little more. So that's my current situation. City's not in a great spot, but like how bad of a spot? I mean, they won at home, then they're playing at home again. It's not really like a travel situation, and so I'm not too worried about it. They played Tuesday, not Wednesday, so any potential hangovers kind of out of the picture. And it was not a difficult match. I mean, it was basically a training session against Belgrade. They had 40 shots, so attack and defend training session that they won 3-1. Sorry about your bet, 41-1. I mean, it was a fun one.
Yeah,
you got your money. You got your money's worth.
I got my moment. That's all I wanted was a moment,
and then you got a whole 15 minutes of halftime to stew on it and think about. And that's the dream.
That is the dream.
15-minute halftime. You're like, wow, this could happen. What if this goalie just never?
45.
What if this goalie becomes Jan Sommer for 45 minutes? I mean,
and you know what the thing is, and not to go on a big
legacy game
about the Champions League, but like if you're gonna hit one of those, you needed a lot of luck. Red Star was getting every single bounce in the first half. Like every single shot was going either right at the keeper. He was making crazy saves. Haaland hit the crossbar. Like just every bounce that we needed went our way. And then and then what happened, like it was supposed to. They did cover though, which is good.
+3 was truly never in doubt.
No, I was getting nervous towards the end. I mean, at least for a push. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned with Forest, like one of the things, we talk about all the time when we're evaluating teams that like to play passive low blocks is what's your final third to box entry conversion rate? Like how good are you at keeping opponents out of your penalty area? Forest is first in the Premier League this year. They've conceded 2 big scoring chances all season, top 5 in shots allowed per 90. Like this defense is kind of good. Like they've played United and they've played Arsenal. Like this is not like they've just been playing a cake schedule. So for me, I'm just passing. I'm right around where the market is. I'll see what happens. But I mean, City is eventually going to lose at some point. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just win every single match until the end.
Well, they're going to have to play real teams first. I mean, they've had they played Newcastle at home. That was the only marginally difficult fixture they've had.
Right.
I mean, away to West Ham is not easy, but
they got Leipzig.
We're not that high on West Ham, so they got Leipzig in the Champions League in 2 weeks. I saw the opening number. We're going to be betting Leipzig at home.
Yeah,
just put that out there. At least I am,
for sure. All right, let's move on. Of course, we got to have this match as the headliner. This is like almost kind of like a podcast derby in a way, I guess. Brentford hosting Michael's Everton. Brentford's a minus 125 home favorite. Everton sitting at plus 320 with the draw at plus 280. Honestly, when I looked at this to begin with, I was like, this number's kind of short on Brentford, given what they've done so far in this Premier League season. But I ended up running my numbers, and I was pretty close to the market. But I do like a total here, but I'll let you go first in case you have something for this match.
Well, Dyche pulled the old switcheroo on us.
Yep.
Sunday. I mean, that match sucked. It was terrible. Awful soccer. And we talked about that a little bit in the Champions League show, so I won't get too into it. But we talked about it from an Arsenal perspective. From an Everton perspective, it was interesting because, okay, you're hosting a Big Six team. You're hosting one of the best teams in the league. Everton has done that in different ways in the last few years. They've gone to Brighton and been on the front foot. They've hosted Arsenal and been on the front foot. They've tried to go to Arsenal and do that. They've played Liverpool in a match that was pretty diabolical. They went very defensive. So we've seen Dyche kind of go back and forth here. And I thought the approach was interesting. You have to monitor the injuries here, though, because Beto was okay, but this attack is short. They don't have enough talent on the pitch. They need to get DCL. They need to get Jack Harrison. That is when I will be looking to one more time, buy Everton. They pushed last week, but this is not the spot for me. Brentford is too disciplined, too good on set pieces, and too good at everything Everton purports to try to be. They're kind of the more talented version of Frank Ball is the more talented version of what Dyche is running over at Everton anyway. So I'm going to go and pass here. Just straight up pass. I get the point for the over. I know how bad Everton's defense has been. I know that the attack should score more, but Brentford in favorite roles tends to be lower event, and Dyche would play out a lower event match too. So I'm going to be far away from the total too.
Yeah, I projected 2.9 for this, so I will be on over 2.5.
I project over value too. That's the thing. Yeah. But I'm saying I just don't really trust that number.
And that's the thing is it is kind of a question mark of what Dyche is going to do. I don't, in this type of role, I don't see him being the type to just sit back and do what he did against Arsenal. Like, I think that instance was very conducive to what happened both times they faced Arsenal last season, where first match season they came out and pressed them and blitzed them and took Arsenal by surprise. And then the second meeting, they tried to do it again. It didn't work. So now he was probably thinking, okay, I can't try that a third time. I'm going to get blitzed again. So he played more passive. And honestly, it was a terrible match, but at least they didn't give up 5 or 6 goals. They held Arsenal to 1.3. So, you can't really...
They had a couple half chances.
A couple half chances here or there. I think a match like this will play out more similarly to the one that we saw against Sheffield United, where Everton was more on the front foot, where they were more trying to break down low blocks, because it doesn't really make much sense. You can just give Brentford the ball and be like, here, Brentford, why don't you try to break us down and we'll try to play you in transition. But Everton, Brentford's a really good transitional team. They can defend you really well there. So turning them over high, doing what essentially Bournemouth did to them, which is getting those turnovers and catching Brentford out of position, is the best route to actually beating Brentford. So I think that's what they're going to do. And Brentford's been really impressive this season. Without Tony, 10.7 expected goals. I know they've had a couple penalties in there. They've created the most expected goals off of set pieces. That's no surprise. And I've said this with Everton's high pressing is that, yes, they have forced the 5th most high turnovers, but they don't have a pass per defensive action of 14, 16th in build-up completion percentage allowed. That's tells me that once you beat the first line of defense, it's just acres of space and you can really get at this Everton defense. So, in the Everton offense, like we say every single week, is overdue to score. Bournemouth. Brentford just lost Rico Henry, which is a substantial loss for them in wide areas, which Everton has attempted the 3rd most crosses, and that's how they generate a lot of their offense. So they could get at Brentford there. But yeah, simple projection edge here, 2.9 expected goals. I don't think we'll see what we saw with Dyche against Arsenal. If he comes out and does it again, then I'll have to readjust some numbers and redo some things. But as it stands right now, I do not think he's going to do that. So over 2.5 at minus 110 for me. All right, and then let's move on to the final match of Saturday. Burnley at Turf Moor hosting Manchester United. Burnley at plus 330 home underdog. Manchester United minus 143 on the road. Already taken some money after their defeat against Bayern today, and the draw sitting at plus 320. I'll be honest, when I initially looked at this, it just screamed over to me. And if you follow me in the app, I have bet over 3 goals at plus 106. But man, it is really hard for me with all the problems with Manchester United right now not to stare at Burnley at plus 333 and take them. Do you think that they have any chance in this match, or do you think the United's problems extend here and they get upset again? And what is now their third match in 7 days?
Yeah, I mean, the injured list is crazy
It's
now. Between injured / suspended / in trouble, whatever the hell you away from the team.
Not
Anthony,
playing.
Sancho, Mount. That's the attacking group. Amrabat not fit, Then defensively, the only guys they have are the dudes they played today, plus Johnny Evans. They had 5 available defenders in the traveling squad to Bayern Munich. And it's not like they're bringing 4 classy defenders here. We're talking about Sergio Reguilon, who was not a good defender at Tottenham nor Sevilla. We're talking about Diego Dallo, who's definitely an attack first right back. Victor Lindelof. Lisandro Martinez has been terrible. I mean, he looks like he got cooked overnight. And so, he was one of the best center backs in the league first half of the season last year. He's not been good since, I'd argue, like April for United. And the result of that is just a really bad defense. And I mean, look what Bayern did today. It wasn't any different. I mean, Bayern, I actually thought United started well, first 20, 25 minutes. Bayern didn't take a shot until the 19th minute. So The defensive press was doing a good job. They were fine out of possession, but eventually they started to wear down. And once you got to that second half, it was just Bayern wingers walking into the penalty area, Musiala getting in. I mean, he dribbled the whole team at one point. Like, it was really bad how much they wilted. And it was a Casemiro Eriksson pivot. Pellistri playing right wing. I mean, it's just not a good team right now. So, if you like Burnley, I think it has to be on the money line. Chase the high variance outcomes. United's attack looked decent today, but again, it would be over nothing for me too. But I'm passing here. I think Mdouni has been impressive. He's put up some really good numbers early for Burnley too. I think that the question mark is though, like, at what point do we buy low? Because I didn't think it was today. I don't think it's Saturday. But eventually there will come a time where they're going to start to get players back. I can see myself being a Man United better in the future. But, I mean, there's still so much market respect. Tottenham was minus 110 against Burnley 3 weeks ago. This United team is minus 135 with these injuries. 143, I think you said.
I'm not seeing them buy low.
The Tottenham and United, I have Tottenham slightly better right now. With injuries, it's a little bigger. So
here's United's upcoming schedule after Burnley. They have a EFL Cup match against Palace, and they play Palace again. Both matches are at Old Trafford in the Premier League.
They host Palace this weekend? Next weekend?
Next weekend, they host Palace. Then they host Galatasaray.
Are we getting a goal plus there?
Yes.
No way, right?
I believe United is sitting around minus 175, minus 180
so we're getting a goal
right now. Yeah, so we're getting 1 goal. And then they host, after Galatasaray, they host Brentford, then they go to Sheffield United, and then they...
We're not betting United anytime in the next couple weeks, that's for sure, yeah.
And then I guess Copenhagen and the Champions League, which I'm not...
Are they at Copenhagen?
No, at home. And then they're hosting Manchester City in the Manchester Derby. Like, there's
that's the that'll be when I'm on them.
Okay, we've been talking about this forever with United, but here's like what really boiled down to me, especially not even today against Bayern, because Bayern is Bayern, but the match against Brighton, I thought it was very, very clear what the problem has been for a very, very long time. And it even goes all the way back to Ralph Rangnick, is that Manchester United is just not a good pressing team. And with the personnel that they have right now, it's never going to be that, because what you saw against Brighton is that Marcus Rashford doesn't press. They try to press in unison with their front four, in the 4-2-3-1. But if Rashford is just going to be a passenger, essentially is the quote that a lot of tactical people have used. Well, Brighton just overloaded that side of the pitch with, Dallo obviously playing out of position at left back, and then they just cooked them time and time again down that wing. And You mentioned today.
Not sure Burnley does that, but yeah, I think
that's my point. It's like,
more bigger
Burnley
picture.
will play. Burnley builds out of the back. They are a possession dominant team, so they will try and do that. And I think that's what leads to a very conducive back and forth type match here, because if it doesn't work for United, well, then Burnley's going to have a ton of chances to run at this back line. Like, as you mentioned, basically just has Lisandro Martinez right now as their only starter. They usually would start along their back four. And then if the press actually works, well, then they can turn Burnley over high, do what essentially Tottenham did to them, and create a lot of chances going forward. But I believe it was The Athletic put out essentially a chart of Manchester United's rolling passes per defensive action, going all the way back to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And obviously, Ole didn't press high a lot, comparatively to what, managers are doing now. Manchester United has never been under a 10 passes per defensive action, which would be considered elite in terms of, in terms of the Premier League. Never. In the whole span of Ralph Rangnick to Eric Ten Hag, never been below 10. So that just tells me that their press is not intense enough to what they are actually trying to do, which is why teams have been able to play through them. You can say injuries have played a part. You can say, Casemiro being out an extended period of time last year due to injuries and suspensions plays a part of it. But the reality is that the personnel that they have just can't be an elite high pressing team, which is why they keep getting played through time and time again. Now, Burnley does the exact thing where they have been pressing with front threes and front fours and just not being able to close down good build-up teams. Now, I wouldn't say United's a good build-up team at this stage, but they've shown that in transition they can be very deadly now with Højlund playing up top. So I think this is going to lead itself to a very conducive back and forth type match. So I didn't project a ton of edge on this, really. I projected right around 3 goals, which is usually taking into a lot of Burnley's, defensive metrics from the championship, which were really good. But what we've seen through the first 4 matches, when they've played against City and Tottenham and Villa, excuse me, they've really struggled to disrupt build-up play. So I do like over 3 goals at plus 106 here. And like you said, if you're going to bet Burnley on the money line, got to chase a big number here with the problems that United has. Okay, let's move on to Sunday, which is actually a pretty good slate. This is a good Sunday is going to be fun.
All the 4 best matches at the weekend that I'm most looking forward to watching all at the same time, including the Derby, which means I won't be able to watch all of them, which is very frustrating.
Yep. 9 a.m. Eastern time. Let's start with Brighton hosting Bournemouth. We are going to be on opposite sides here. Brighton sitting at minus 275. Bournemouth at plus 650 with the draw at plus 425. You do actually like Iriola against De Zerbi here and potentially maybe covering a spread.
Yep. I'm going to do something that's sacrilegious. I'm going to do something that's disgusting. I'm going to do something that I hate to do, and I'm going to bet against the Brighton and Hove Albion Seagulls. I think when you look at, the kind of situations where I want to look to bet against Brighton, it is going to be in these spots as overwhelming favorites because their defense is so flawed. And we have discussed this on the show, but they are on pace to give up over 55 expected goals this year, which is bad. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to use game state. And you could spin a web. Look, I've thought about this a lot because I want to spin the web on Brighton. They have been extremely good finishing wise. Imagine saying that, by the way. They have Matoma, who's awesome. Estupinian. Like, there's so much fun attacking, progressive talent, ball winning. The 30 pass sequence that they put together on Man United was amazing, but they are flawed defensively. And when they're laying more than a goal to West Ham, when they're laying more than a goal and a half now to Bournemouth, keep in mind, and this is how much the market I think has moved. Opening day, I was happily ready to bet Brighton minus 1.5 at home against Luton Town because I said that is a ridiculous price. They should be laying 2 because Luton Town is the worst team in the league, and I still think they are. Mm-hmm. But I don't, and this comes down to Bournemouth too. I don't think Bournemouth is the worst team in the league. I don't think Bournemouth is even a bottom 4 or 5 team. If you schedule adjust their numbers, they are still in the bottom 5 in expected goal difference. And Michael Cayley from the Double Pivot podcast, great Twitter follow if you're in analytics and soccer, he did a really good tweet where he did an analytics as he called it, And he schedule adjusted all 5 matches and said, let's create a different table, adjusted expected goal difference per match, just based on who you've played and how you've performed. Bournemouth was minus 0.6 per 90. Brighton was plus 0.27 per 90. If you roll in, home field, it still doesn't get you to 1.5. And I think Bournemouth has the chance to play better because they're getting healthier. The injury report at the beginning of the season was 7-8 players long. Now we're down to pretty much just Tyler Adams, who probably won't play on Sunday, but has a chance to make the team. I would be surprised if he was available. But the defensive pressing can disrupt Brighton and create enough transition opportunities for them to go. And look, I thought it was impressive what they did against Chelsea. I know they conceded about 1.5 expected goals, but in the late stages of that match, they were able to continue to press, bring on new players to press, and had numerous chances to win that match late. So it's a team that's not going to run out of gas. The team, we've seen Brighton become incredibly good as front runners, but we've also seen Brighton play Wolves where they were up 1-0 and then Wolves had chance to cut into the lead and miss their chances. We've seen West Ham, that match notwithstanding. So I'm going to play against Brighton. I'm going to do it. Cherries plus 1.5.
I'm not. I'm going to take Brighton minus 1.5. And I think there are some, not I wouldn't say like real tactical flaws with Bournemouth, but enough flaws where we're transitioning from a defensive low block system to a pressing system where right now, when they've been playing elite build-up sides, they have struggled. So if you key in on their match against Liverpool, yes, they forced a high turnover right out of the gates, scored. It was a great moment. But after that, what Liverpool started to do is that since Bournemouth really doesn't man-mark press you, it's more of a zonal trapping type press, Liverpool just started kind of drifting Trent Alexander-Arnold out wide. Usually he inverts in the middle of the pitch. And what they were trying to do is Philip Billing as the main guy in the center of the pitch that has to defend essentially 2 guys because, elite build-up teams will put 2 guys in the middle of the pitch to create a numerical advantage and try to play through the middle of the pitch, which is the best option if you're trying to break a press. Liverpool started putting Trent Alexander-Arnold out wide, and they just started cooking them in wide areas time and time and time again. And that made me think about what Brighton just did to Manchester United, where they were starting to overload Marcus Rashford's side of the pitch and just cooking them time and time and time again. And listen, Brighton, they're very aggressive. And I agree with you. Like there is a scenario where Bournemouth turns them over high and they create a bunch of chances like they did against Brentford or turns them over high like they did against Liverpool. That scenario is perfectly possible here. But what we've seen from Brighton is that going back to last season, they've been the best team at playing through pressure. Like they've made a couple mistakes here and there, but by the whole sample size of what we've seen, they were number 1 in offensive passes per defensive action going from last season. They're still top 4 this year. If they are going to, I also saw something that's very, very funny and very deserving. Someone put out a percentage of goal kicks that go long or don't. Brighton is literally at 0. They have not sent 1 goal kick long. It's quite insane. So they are going to bait Bournemouth into pressing them, which I think is an incredibly dangerous game to play if you are Bournemouth, and one that I think Brighton can absolutely rip them apart if they get through that first line of the defense. And I get it. Like, the market has gone a little bit higher here on Brighton. They are playing on Thursday against AEK Athens in the Europa League. Yep. That's a home match, though, so there will be no travel for them. And they are getting healthy as well. They had, going into the United match, like Evan Ferguson was questionable. Danny Welbeck was questionable. Well, now they're basically healthy. So they have a ton of depth, too, as well. So I don't think depth is really a concern here with playing a match on Thursday and then on Sunday. I mean, Bournemouth, the 3 matches that they've played against Tottenham, against Liverpool, and against Chelsea. I mean, they have conceded 6.9 expected goals. And those teams have just, if you look at Conor Gallagher's positioning in the midfield against Chelsea, he was finding acres of space by playing in behind them, by basically just standing still and letting guys roam and let the press come in. Brighton is so good at manipulating that press and so good at overloading and finding those areas to get through. So they're going to bait them, and I think that they are going to absolutely rip them apart. But we'll see what happens.
I think they will too. I just think they're going to concede a goal or two, and that's it's going to be really hard to lay a goal and a half if you're conceding a goal every match. That's my thinking. I think it's very hard for them to be laying this big number against, again, Bournemouth's had their defensive issues, but let's give them their due. They have produced one expected goal in 4 of their 5 matches, and that includes games against, Liverpool and against, other good teams, Tottenham, Chelsea. So, Brentford, they had over 2. So this has been a good team at times. Not a great team. I don't think they're good, but I'm buying the progression under Iraola. I'm betting on the manager. And I think this is going to be a rousing 3-2 Brighton victory. I want the goals to win. I just don't think they're going to cover the 1.5. So hopefully it's a close one. And, it will feel sick the whole match. But I'll be watching Tottenham lose. So in the meantime, hopefully, the goals. I'm going against them. Sure. By the way, Liebhoff is not here. He would be on Bournemouth money line.
I know he would. No, I would. Yeah. I know he would.
7-1.
Yeah.
Brighton. All it takes is one cold day. And they've been running really hot.
But, I mean, yeah. All right, we'll see. We're going all along.
I still love our goals, though. Don't worry. We need to get knocked down a peg, win close. Maybe the market will downgrade us a little bit. And then I haven't looked at the schedule, but I'm sure there's going to be a Brighton.
They got Aston Villa on the road next, and they're a straight pick 'em. So
okay, so we're not betting Brighton that day.
Yeah.
And then we go to Marseille. We host Liverpool. So. And then we go to City. So I'll tell you what, the fixtures are about to get a lot harder. That'll be really interesting.
Yep, they are.
We're going to learn a lot about the goals.
Yep. Speaking of Aston Villa, they're going on the road to face Chelsea on
We have
Sunday.
To talk about Chelsea.
Chelsea's minus 120.
Can we skip Chelsea?
3-1. And the draw is at plus 270. This is the time. This is the time to buy low on Chelsea, if there ever was one. I mean... What more can you say other than they just can't finish? Like there's been I feel like there's been 17 different articles that have came out this week saying everything's fine with Chelsea, no need to worry. Which looking into a lot of their numbers, you can say, there's the process is there. The Pochettino ball is starting to take its form. They've been in an elite high pressing team. They're controlling possession, they're getting chances, they just can't score. And 10.2 expected goals, scored 5. So you could say positive regression. But what I am more encouraged by is that not only their in possession numbers, where they are top 3 in a lot of offensive metrics that we look at, but out of possession, where they're the number 1 team in passes per defensive action, where they're top 3 in expected threat allowed, top 3 in field tilt. These are the metrics that tell us whether a team is trending in the right direction and being able to control possession and actually flip the field on teams and be able to break down these type of low blocks. And I mean, for Aston Villa, I think we need to kind of Aston Villa is they're the perfect example of a team that can really play well against bottom half table sides and just get absolutely cooked by the big boys, because it comes down to Unai Emery's insistence on playing out of the back. They're just not good enough to play against elite pressing sides and play out of the back. You saw what happened against Newcastle. You saw what happened against Liverpool. Chelsea can do the exact same thing to them. I thought Chelsea was good against Bournemouth. I don't think that they I thought for large, like you said, Bournemouth had the flurry at the end, but I thought for pretty much the most of the match, Chelsea controlled it well, created chances. They just can't finish. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So I did project Chelsea at minus 122. If there was ever a time to buy on them, I think it's now at minus 110. What do you think?
There has been some interesting buy off Chelsea this year in the market, leading into matches. Last 2 weeks, the market has steamed pretty hard against them, and those have been poor results. Loss to Forest, draw with Bournemouth. If you adjust, though, the schedule numbers, the Cayley chart that I talked about, Chelsea 5th, plus 0.57 per 90, which is good enough to be in the top 4. They've been just pretty evenly good on both sides of the ball. Villa has been a bad defensive team.
Yep.
Worse than Everton in XG allowed, worse than Tottenham, about as bad as Brighton, much worse than Forest, Palace, and almost as bad as Man United. So that's the defense we're talking about here, based on schedule. And
it all came in 2 matches. It's all Liverpool,
right?
those are the 2 matches.
And Chelsea has the passers. Do they have the finishers? We're about to find out. They have the runners. Nico Jackson and Raz are the runners. So I think that if you're looking for a team to break down this Villa team, Chelsea's going to get their chances. And Chelsea and Villa played last year in the spring. It was Potter Ball. It was right before he got fired. It was one of the most dominant losses I've ever seen by a team in the Premier League. Chelsea turned them over and over again and got soccered, lost 2-0, but completely dominated the match. It was amazing to see. So I think that there's going to be real problems for Villa here. I will be on the Blues as well.
Yeah, I also forgot to mention Villa traveling to Poland to take on Ligue Warsaw in the Europa Conference League on Thursday as well. And what we've seen from Emery in his, the matches against Hibernian when they had to play qualifications to get in the Europa Conference League, didn't really rotate too many guys. So I'm expecting
at least not the first leg. They were up 5-0. They rotated, but not the first
they rotated
leg.
some, but I think Diaby still played. Like it was pretty crazy. So I'm expecting a full squad from them on Thursday. So not a great spot here for Villa. So great buy low opportunity on Chelsea. All right, let's move on to the last match in the 9 a.m. window. Liverpool hosting West Ham. Liverpool's minus 250. West Ham sitting at 6-1 with the draw at 4-1. I think this is like one of the easier passes.
I agree.
This weekend.
West Ham has just not been good defensively. They haven't.
No,
I don't care I don't care how many goals they've conceded or what results they've gotten. They have been bad defensively, period. Mm-hmm. And that is something worth discussing because they have now played, they played some tough teams. They played Chelsea, they played City, they played, some tough match, Brighton. But just conceding a shit ton of chances and hoping they don't go in is not a viable strategy. And Areola's been awesome. It's David Moyes, baby. And this year, look, they deserve it because they ran bad last year. This year, they're having some run good. I'm enjoying, the Hammer's success. Not really, but, it's been interesting. And I don't really buy it. So I think Liverpool beats them pretty comfortably here. But you know what? Liverpool's been bad on set pieces. Van Dijk will be back. So hopefully that helps. Trent's probably not back, it seems.
Yeah.
Don't think he's traveling for their Europa League. And that means probably not going to play Sunday, but you never know. But yeah, pass for me.
Yeah, easy pass. All right, let's move on to the final match. And of course, we had to have this match as the headliner, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday. Sheffield United hosting Newcastle. Sheffield United is at plus 550. Newcastle minus 223. The draw at plus 375. It's a pass for me, but I do see your angle here on the under.
Under 3, minus 118. Second bet I made this week after Palace. I bet it during the Milan match because I watched the same team just do the same thing. It's when they play against teams who let them have the ball and in settled possession, they have really struggled. They struggled against Brentford. They got a penalty, but they did not create any big scoring chances whatsoever in that match. When they played City was very passive against them. But this was an attack that did not create much. So as good as the defense is and has been and will continue to be, I think, and I don't really see a ton of trouble for them defensively here. I think the attack is not getting margin anymore. I think that the success they had when playing up a goal last year is just that, a last year thing that probably regresses this year, and they're not going to be quite as dominant as front runners. Thus, they're going to see a lot more 1-0s and a lot more low-scoring, grinded-out affairs. The choices for attack continue to puzzle me. Where is Harvey Barnes? Why can they not play Isak and Wilson together, especially in this matchup against a bad team where they're going to have a lot of the ball, get more shots and creativity on the pitch, but they're not doing it. They're in the name of solidity because Almiron and Murphy and Gordon do so much defensive work. They're just not optimizing their attack for attack. So I'm going to bet the under.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's very interesting. They just obviously that's the thing about Harvey Barnes. He's a great goal scoring option from the left, but he just doesn't do the defensive work that Anthony Gordon does. So that's why they're playing.
He's not getting in the team, which, you know what? Fine.
Yeah.
They're sacrificing attack for defense. Fine. They're going to be an under team as a result of that. And their defense has been really good. The same Cayley chart, number 2 in the league in adjusted XG difference. They've played a really tough freaking schedule.
They have.
And they got a good win against Brentford. They got the points. They'll probably win this match, but I like the under.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Germany. The Bundesliga. What do you have for us this week in Germany?
Union Berlin, Hoffenheim over 2.5 goals, minus
What?
110.
Over?
Yep. Yeah. I told you this on last week's show, and I'm coming to this position. I'm developing this position. I watched Union play against Madrid. They were pretty bad defensively. Yeah. It was a lot of last ditch stuff. And granted, Hoffenheim is not Real Madrid, but through the early portion of this season, Union Berlin, 4 matches in, is a below average defensive team in the Bundesliga. I know how good they were last year, and I respect it, but I do not think it's repeatable given the talent, given the situation. And I actually like the attacking additions. So I think their attack will be better than one of the worst in the league. I think their defense will be worse than one of the best of the league. And thus, I think Union Berlin is kind of like a Wolves for me. They're becoming an overs team. And I know how, I'll regret this immediately. But where do you think Union Berlin ranked in XG allowed 2 years ago in the Bundesliga?
8th.
They were 4th. So, it's not like I think they're going to be like all of a sudden bad defensively because they've got an established level here. But Hoffenheim, first of all, and this is also, the other part of it, Hoffenheim's defense, fell off a cliff about the halfway point of last season and has never recovered. And their attack is still good. Like they still get good production out of Kramaric and they still put it together. But this defense has fallen off a cliff. So I think the total's a little low. I'm betting the over 2.5. You're going to tell me you have projected value on the under. That's fine.
I do. I'm not playing it, but
I like the over.
I've written about Hoffenheim, I think once this season so far, but essentially what it is they've, midway through last season, they made a change in manager who favored a more high pressing style, which just is not conducive to them and their defensive numbers improving, and they've conceded a ton of chances. So
forwards are too old. They don't press and they get exposed as a result. And look,
exactly.
Union Berlin, they're going to have a lot of space to operate. So
yeah, speaking of Union Berlin, I like Mainz, draw no bet, minus 110 on the road against Augsburg. Mainz is at the bottom of the Bundesliga table. They got a -9 -9 actual goal differential. Expected goal differential is only around -2. And if you look through their matches, they got Union Berlin on opening day, lost 4-1, won on XG 2.3 to 1.9. That's what Union Berlin does. Played a very even match with Frankfurt. Then, if you look at the overall XG against Werder Bremen, they lost 4-0, but Werder Bremen scored early, and really from the beginning of the match until about around the 80th minute, it was a pretty even on XG. And then, Werder Bremen created 3 big scoring chances towards the end of the match and obviously inflates the XG. And then last week they got beat by Stuttgart 3-1, but again, pretty close on XG. And then you look at Augsburg, and you mentioned this on the Champions League pod, but if people were just looking through XG and they'd be like, oh my gosh, Augsburg actually beat Leipzig on XG, like 1.7 to 1.1. Well, Leipzig scored 2 goals early, and it was just a lot of late chances for Augsburg that kind of inflated it. This is an Augsburg team that, again, we've mentioned many times, was -24 XG differential per 90 in the Bundesliga last year, and Mainz was around even. So using priors coming into this one, I really don't think that there's, essentially that you would say Mainz is only, my plus 120, plus 125 home favorite, plus 125 favorite on a neutral field. So Mainz -110, draw no bet. All right, let's move on to Italy. Anthony, you're passing on Italy this weekend. I like Torino, Roma, both teams to score. No, at -135. Jose Mourinho is an absolute sicko. Did you see the box score from their 7-0 win against Empoli?
I saw the quote that said he won the Europa League, and I sent a complaint to the sportsbook at which I bet it and said that they obviously won, but they unfortunately disagreed with that assessment. I will not be getting paid out for that ticket.
Roma beat Empoli over the weekend 7-0 with a 35% field tilt. It just insane sicko stuff from Jose Mourinho, like unbelievable.
BJ's first Roma bet win of the season.
But no, these are 2 of the more defensive teams in Serie. Torino, very, very good at disrupting people trying to build out through you. And honestly, I just projected at -155 for 2 of the more defensive teams. So both teams scored no, -135 for me. Roma will be an interesting team going forward to see how Lukaku kind of blends in with this squad. And, they've obviously lost some players in the middle of the pitch as well. So we'll see how it goes going forward with Roma. All right, let's move on to Spain. What do you have for us in La Liga this weekend?
I like a couple bets, so I'm just going to mention them both because I don't really like one more than the other. Barcelona, Celta Vigo, both teams to score. Look, Marc-Andre Ter Stegen might be the greatest goalie the world has ever seen, but this Barcelona, adding Joao Felix into the midfield and getting Gavi in there as well, like it tilts the thing just enough to attack where I think they're going to start to be more vulnerable defensively. And Xavi ball has been painful at times this season because they haven't quite pushed that dial, but you're starting to see the wheels turn, and I think they're going to concede more as a result. Even Antwerp was able to get a bunch of big chances right at the end there in a flurry. I think it ended up being offside by like a toe, but they had a bunch of really good chances at the end in that match. Vigo with Benitez now, like they're an improving attack. They're a group that I'm going to continue to look to buy as a bet on team. If you look at some of their underlying numbers going forward, they've only scored 4 goals this year in 5 matches, which sounds bad, but XG's been better. And, some of the other ball progression numbers are improving. So I'm buying Vigo and I'm buying goals. And then Vallecano is a pick 'em at home against Villarreal. I mean, from a buy low, like teams we like versus teams we don't like perspective, this number doesn't make sense to me. Villarreal has been quite bad, in fact, in La Liga. They have a minus 0.45 XG difference per 90, and they have not played a hard schedule. They played Barca, but the rest of their opponents, Mallorca, Cadiz, and Almeria have been 3 of their 5 games. So they've been bad. Their results have been up and down, but again, like the defense stinks, and now they lost all their attacking talent. So at Vallecano, they should not be a pick'em. They should be a sizable dog. I have this like a quarter goal. So I'm going to take Vallecano pick'em minus 110 at home.
They also just fired their manager, Quique Setién, and brought in who was a very possession-dominant build out of the back. Like, if you look at their numbers, they were controlling, essentially way over 50% possession against every single team they played. Now the manager they're bringing in is a more direct style manager in the past. So
I don't think they have the personnel for it, though. I generally think that like Villarreal had a nice run here, but I think that they've kind of regressed back to like the upper mid-table. Vallecano is still putting up decent numbers even after Andoni left. There are some pen air in it, but it's legit, and they've had some good wins. They haven't played anybody besides Atleti, who beat them by 7. So they could lose by 7, and I bet them that day. But they're undervalued here for me.
We also have the Madrid derby this weekend, and I like the over 2.5 goals at minus 115, projected close to 3 on this one. I mean, Real put in a great performance offensively against Union today, created over 3 expected goals, really controlled that game for most of the second half, really was in and around Union's penalty area. Atletico gave up a goal to a goalie against Lazio, which was kind of funny to see. But, I mean, in reality, with the way that Diego Simeone's team has been getting forward with this new type of formation and how passive Real has been, Real is only allowing around 1 expected goal per 90 in La Liga. But, if you look at some of the teams that they've had to face, it's a lot of the dregs or teams that can't really get forward and threaten them. Really the team that has threatened them the most is Almeria. Is really, really gave them a big time scare in the second match of the season. And Atletico does have the personnel in wide areas out of their 5-3-2 to give them some problems. So just a projection edge for me in the Madrid derby. Let's finish up here with France. I, unfortunately, am passing this weekend. No real spots I like. Kind of like Rennes, but they're coming off a Europa League match on Thursday. But you have a nice Friday pick for us.
Yeah, second straight week. Nice plays on Friday. I am not going to miss betting them this week. This team might be a sleeping giant. They have put up some very impressive early season results. And the market has really liked them too. And that's why I'm more inclined to believe it. I don't consider myself to be like the most knowledgeable Ligue 1 expert in the world, but I can see an emerging trend when I see one. And this is a team that just held PSG to 1 expected goal and beat them 3-2 at the Parc des Princes, a team that dominated Strasbourg 2 weeks ago, a Strasbourg team that I'm pretty high on in the market, dominated Lyon. I know Lyon has had their own issues, but also outplayed Lille in the first match at home too. So like they've taken all of these French teams that I came into the season just like doing my process and saying, I think these couple of teams might be good. And then they've beaten the shit out of them. And now they go to Monaco, who has had good start themselves, the plus 0.88 XG difference per 90. But, it's a Monaco team that I think is more flawed defensively than they've been exposed so far. And I think that this Nice team, putting up the elite defensive numbers they have, being more solid defensively, catching a half goal at home, I'm going to back them here because I am a seller in Monaco. I think they're a little bit overvalued now after this hot start.
Yeah, Nice over the second half of last season in Ligue 1, second best expected goal differential in the league behind only Lille. So team definitely on the rise right now. All right, let's move on to everybody's favorite portion of the program. Lieboff is not here, but he has faxed me, and he has said he would like Tottenham as
shocker
underdog this weekend, which is a big shocker. Who's your favorite underdog this weekend, Anthony?
I'm going to go with Nice. We just talked about it. I think they're undervalued. We're going to get it started on Friday. I'm going to go with them. Second straight week, I'll take a Friday dog. Last week, Leverkusen, Wirtz hit the post. We had our chance to take the lead late. They didn't quite get there. But this week, I'm going to go with Nice as the dog of the week. I usually like to take home teams if I can help it, but I think that they're a sleeping giant, so I will take them. No shock that Michael picked Tottenham, though. He loves him some Ange Postecoglou. And you know what? We'll see what the results make, but if you've seen his commentary on mental health and how he's helped Richarlison and how he's been really honest and whatnot, and even today in a press conference where he made sure to let the one man get a question in at the end, go find the video. Just a deeply warming individual and somebody that I want to root for, not just as a fan, but as a fan of Spurs, but as a fan of sport in general. I think he's a really good person, and it's cool to see.
And he's someone who's paid his dues. Like, he is not somebody who's, he's gone through a very unique route to get to this job, going through Australia, then through Japan, eventually to Glasgow, and now to Tottenham. Yeah, just a very, very great individual. I agree. Mine, underdog, another club that can warm your heart, Luton Town, plus 225 at home against Wolves. Really just don't think Wolves would be a road favorite here. Wolves, if you've watched them, they've been afforded space against a lot of these teams, whether it be Liverpool, Manchester United, Brighton. They've been afforded teams that will not only press high, but really tilt the field on them, which gives them transitional opportunities that allows Neto and Cunha and all of their great attackers to get forward and actually have space and use the pace that they have. They're not going to have any space against Luton Town. Luton Town just conceded 77% possession to Fulham of all teams. So they're going to play their low block. They're going to try to play in transition, which I'm not sure Wolves, even though Luton Town doesn't have much talent, they don't have, they still are the worst team in the Premier League. I think the price is a little too insane here on Wolves. So I like Luton Town at plus 225. This parlay comes out to 47-1. One of our shorter parlays. So we'll see if we can hit our first one of the season. And let's wrap up the show with our best bets in the Premier League. Anthony, we'll start with you.
Crystal Palace minus 110 at home against Fulham. Better defensively. They've replaced the production of Zaha by getting the leap from Eze and Edouard. Better offensively than Fulham. And I think the Cottagers have run really well for a year and a half now, and including in their win against Luton, where they were not particularly impressive. Palace loses late, tough. Bounce back here for them. They win at home, minus 110.
My favorite bet is Burnley, Manchester United, over 3 goals at plus 106. There's all sorts of issues that are happening with Manchester United right now, but really what it comes down to is 2 things. One, they're dealing with a ton of injuries. Basically, 3 of their 4 stars across their back line are injured right now. And 2, Erik ten Hag is trying to turn this team into an elite, high-pressing, transitional type team. But the problem is essentially over the last 2 years now, even going back to Ralph Rangnick, is that United doesn't have the personnel to be a high-pressing or elite high-pressing team. Burnley, what they've shown in the championship is they are a build out of the back, possession dominant team. So there are chances where they can do what teams like Brighton and Bayern Munich have done to Manchester United, which is overload whatever side of the pitch and essentially play through United's press. And even if they don't, well, then United will turn them over high and they'll create a lot of chances going forward. The flip side is Burnley likes to press high as well. They've tried it against Tottenham and against Manchester City and against Aston Villa, and it really has not gone well because they've conceded 6.5 expected goals in those 3 matches when they've tried to press elite build-up teams. Now, United right now is not an elite build-up team, but they definitely have the personnel to play through a weak high press like Burnley has. So I think we're going to see a lot of chaotic back and forth, a lot of high turnovers in each team's end. So I like over 3 goals at plus 106. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Wondergoal. Thank you all for listening. We will be back next Thursday morning for your Premier League weekend preview. For Anthony Dubundo, I'm BJ Cunningham. Thank you to our video team and to Noah, our producer, everyone behind the scenes that helps us and makes this podcast sound great. We'll see you all on Thursday morning.